Hey, I'm back for week 3 of Rocket Summer. Probably going to be a short one. I managed to read one book this week, one entire book of 200 pages, which does fit into the category of the project of the reading event. I did not read any other books either. I moved this week to another Airbnb. It's in the same. Oh my God, I can't even point. It's in the same neighborhood as my other one. It was just a time thing. Actually, the same Airbnb host, about a block closer to the beach. It's not a good time of day to film right now. I do have a little balcony here, but the glare is right on it right now, and I'm doing my best inside. And I move this up to try and get as much glare off me from the overhead light as possible. Why do we need to talk about all this? The book I read, once again, I'm doing Michael K. Vaughan's rules of week 1, 30s over 4, week 2, the 1940s, week 3, the 1950s, week 4, the 1960s. For myself, I also added in, I'm just going to do not un-American authors, non-American authors. Probably mostly English. It's actually ended up being all English authors. Because I've already picked out what I'm going to do next week, which we'll talk about then. I keep forgetting the name of the book, but I did write it down, so it's actually a book I'm really looking forward to, as was this. This is what I read this week, The Black Cloud by Fred Hoyle. This is the cover of the ebook for the Valancourt edition. Valancourt is a great publisher, bringing a lot of classic novels. They do the paperbacks from Hell series as one of their sub-e-prints. They do many old science fiction books, feminist literature, different kinds of things. But I had never read Fred Hoyle. He's one of the most. Here's an early cover of it. Out of all the people who've written science fiction, he's probably, of all the scientists who've written science fiction, he's probably the most famous and the most accomplished in his own field, in the field of astronomy. I think he was a proponent of the competing theory to the Big Bang theory, which was called the continual creation theory, I think, or the constant creation theory. I'm going to get that wrong, so I'm going to quit talking about science, or I'm just going to get overwhelmed with corrections, which is fine. But I don't know what I'm talking about on that here. You can see this is an early Penguin edition cover. You can see the kind of theme continues through, and there were many other covers too, but I didn't capture them all. I really had fun looking at the covers. This is probably the more typical type that have appeared in the U.S. probably when it first came out. It's his first novel. It gained life, or it started out as a scientific paper he was writing about molecules in space, molecules existing in the vacuum of space, which he wrote and was rejected by the science journals. But he was later proved correct on his theories. But he decided to take the theories and put them into a science fiction book. He wrote science fiction throughout his life, not super prolifically, but considering the demands of his full-time career, he wrote quite a few successful books. Anyway, this is from 1957. The premise is these astronomers in Southern California, some British astronomers are visiting the facility in Southern California. They discover a black cloud coming towards our solar system that's going to insert itself between the Earth and the Sun, blocking out the Sun for some period of time, causing loss of heat and light and potential total wipeout of all life on Earth. So it conforms to the British disaster novel theme, a very popular subgenre of science fiction in Great Britain, which J.G. Ballard would, just a few decades later would start his career with books like The Drowned World and and that. And at the same time that Hoyle was writing The Black Cloud, would have been the heyday of John Wyndham, who wrote probably one of the best of these type of novels, or at least my favorite, The Day of the Triffids. He's a terrific writer too. I've read all his books before and didn't feel I had enough distance from them to want to read one again for the 50s, so I thought I'd try this. It's a book I known about my whole life. It used to always appear in the science fiction book club when I was in high school or middle school. I never got around to reading it, though. I don't read a lot of hard science fiction, but it's very well written. The characters seem realistically like scientists, very much like scientists. They mostly follow two scientists, or one scientist who goes back to Great Britain just before the phenomenon of the black cloud is reported by the American scientists to the President of the United States, and they consider it a lucky escape because they pretty rightly realized that had they not been able to get out of had they not taken an early flight back to the United Kingdom, the United States probably would have put them in some kind of lockdown, for security purposes. They go back, they inform the British government, pretty much does the same thing the American government does. Their primary concern is not to let any of this get out because they don't want to deal with panic, and the scientists then go to work on ways to mitigate the damage. And I think this is where it is quite, this is not a criticism, it's just an observation, it's quite a British novel as opposed to the approach an American novelist or American filmmaker definitely would take. They immediately realize that it's going to be a disaster no matter what happens. They're trying to find out as much as they can about the black cloud. Their choices are really between can we figure out a strategy, whether it's going underground, whether it's insulation or building long or whatever it might be, that human civilization is only like 95% destroyed. And they're pretty cold about it, which I think is interesting. There's two main groups in the book. There's two main classes of society in the book that are at odds. It's the governments, which Fred Hoyle does not have much sympathy with, and probably neither would anybody else reading the book today or even then. And the scientific community, which is pretty sanguine about the results, but practical and are willing to get to work, but not exactly the most empathetic people. At least they don't come off that way. Anyway, so their main focus is getting more information about the black cloud and figuring out how to mitigate against its danger. It's going to destroy most life on Earth, all major forms of animals. You maybe take a few dogs and cats and pigeons and cows or whatever into these shelters with you, but that's going to be about it. So the world, at least what they're protecting, is going to be very, very different. Then I'll stop recapping at this point because the novel goes in some very interesting, very cool directions, which make it quite different than we think at the beginning. It's probably spoiled. I imagine a lot of it's spoiled by different cover copy on different versions of the books, but I won't spoil it here. It goes into many more iterations, and I want to keep this kind of short because I don't have much else to talk about, but I recommend it highly. The first half, or the first probably third that I've talked about, is very interesting in a sort of a techno-science kind of way. Bigger issues are brought into it, which makes it very much a science fiction novel. There's a few books I could compare it to, interestingly. In a way, maybe it's because I've been thinking about the Foundation trilogy. If you can imagine sort of a near-Earth concept of the Foundation, of Asimov's Foundation, or you could say like the Manhattan Project, which would have been only 10 years old at this time, as in the movie Oppenheimer. There's that kind of dynamic is going on there, where you've got a few elite people who are hopefully going to save everything. Goes in a different direction. Like I said, there's some I really want to talk more about it, but I'm not going to because I think it's worth a read. It runs around 200 pages, like I said. It's very thoughtful in the second half of its questions it poses for humanity and questions it poses for our place in the universe. And I think I'll leave it there. For next week, I've got that one book at least to read. I'm very behind on my reading, but I think I'll get back on track. And then after the end of the fourth week, with one book that I'm reading for this challenge, and I think possibly one short story, I'm going to have time in the last few days of the month to read a book from the 70s, which is also of the same type, meaning a British writer. And I do actually have a backup book for next week too, so maybe I'll do 2 books next week. Anyway, that's about it. The Black Cloud by Fred Hoyle, worth a read if you like hard science fiction, worth a read if you like cosmic stories told on a relatively small scale, meaning it takes place on the planet Earth and the nearest solar system in the time of writing, near future. It was published in 57. It's set in 1964, which would have been the near future then. And if you do read it or have read it, let me know what you think or thought. Okay, that's it for now. I'll see you with other videos later if I ever read another book. Thanks, BookTube.